Hey, everybody, welcome to the first episode of the Progressive Democrats of Howard County podcast. I am one of the co-hosts here, Jake Burdette. We are joined by our other permanent co-host.
Hi, everybody. My name is Hiruy Hadgu, and I'm a co-host of the Progressive Democrats of Howard County podcast.
Thank you, Hiruy. And then we are joined by, I don't think they are a permanent co-host of the podcast, but they are our brilliant and lovely leader. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Nicole Dvorak, and I'm one of the fearless leaders of the Progressive Democrats of Howard County organization, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So this is it, guys. We're here. We've been talking about doing this for so long. We're finally unveiling, kicking out public, producing a little bit more content, including this podcast. So let's talk about why does this group exist all of a sudden? Why are we creating a Progressive Democrats organization, out of nowhere? What are we even here to talk on this podcast about? All great questions that the watcher is probably wondering. So first of all, I think we should, even before we get into that, let's tell the people a little bit about ourselves. So I guess we'll start with Nicole. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks. So a little bit about my background. I'll start with 2018, I suppose. I can go back a little further. My background is a number of things, largely focused on environmentalism, I would say. I've worked on farms, farmers markets, clean energy company. And then in 2018, I decided I wanted to help Democrats get elected again, because I did that about 10 plus years ago in 2008 in Ohio. I worked on a US congressional race there and really wanted to support Democrats again and help them win. So I knocked on a lot of doors in Howard County for Calvin Ball, who was running for county executive then, for every Democrat who was running on the county council and the state delegation races. And then after that effort that a lot of people worked really hard on, was very successful, and many Democrats won elected office that year or were reelected. And then I started working for the newly elected council member, Liz Walsh, in Howard County, who represents Ellicott City and Elkridge, parts of Ellicott City and Elkridge and Hanover. And then worked for her for about 2 years. And now here we are.
Yes. Now, started from the bottom. Now we're here, right? Yeah. So, and Hiruy, you want to tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I think perhaps the relevant background for me starts maybe around after the 2016 elections, and after that I got involved in local community organizing, and that involvement led to seeing how much county local issues have an impact on our daily lives. Led me to decide to run for county council, which was an excellent, very educational experience for me in terms of actually understanding where the important issues lie. And after the 2018 county elections, elections ended, the primary elections, I continued to participate in various organizations, and focusing on land use and zoning, we'll I'm sure we'll touch on this over here today and over the next few months. So we'll see that the most people, people in general, including me, until I started getting involved, don't pay attention to zoning and land use, and that has been very advantageous for political parties to exploit for the benefit of their corporate backers, and so my I continue to be involved to bring more awareness to this exploitation, and making sure that that more people are aware of this exploitation, and to bring about change in a way that our resources are being allocated in an equitable way. And so that's why I'm here.
Yeah, and you've got quite a target on your back for the advocacy that you do, because you're calling out, threatening a lot of people's money there. But we'll get into that in a little bit. But last and least, I'll introduce myself. My name is Jake Burdette, co-host of the podcast, as I said, just a member of the club. Happy to be here. I'm 23 years old, born and raised here in Howard County, though I didn't really get politically conscious until my senior year of high school. The Bernie Sanders 2016 campaign basically activated me, radicalized me, some could even say, turned me on to progressive politics, got involved with activism on the Eastern Shore at Salisbury, both in the Eastern Shore community as well as on campus with the College Democrats. I was co-president of my chapter for 3 semesters there, worked with Maryland College Democrats a little bit, and also just done organizing on issues like Fight for 15, Medicare for All, paid sick leave, in like more just outside the Democratic Party and progressive organizations like Our Revolution and Progressive Maryland. But I've done a ton of work. I was also on the Democratic Central Committee on the Eastern Shore. I've done a lot of work within the Democratic Party, trying to move the party in a more progressive, further left direction, trying to get them off of the addiction of corporate money donations to help them win their campaigns, which I believe money in politics is like my biggest issue, because I think it affects all other issues. They're voting with health insurance executives because they're taking money from health insurance executives. They're voting with developers because they're taking money from developers. So that's been a big issue of mine. I graduated May 2020, got involved with the Matthew Mulliet Board of Education campaign. That's kind of my introduction into Howard County politics and local politics, which I didn't really know much about suburban county politics before then. But after the Mulliet campaign, through that, I became the president of the Columbia Democratic Club in September of 2020. And I think that is maybe a good transition now of why this club exists, especially if I was just the president of another Democratic club. I saw you come off mute if you wanted to say something here.
No, I was gonna ask, what was the group name again?
The Columbia Democratic Club, but the name of our group is the Progressive Democrats of Howard County. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah. Some people
just
don't
wanted
want
to clarify
that name getting out there, but we're here. We're not going away, and we're here to do some great progressive advocacy work. But just to connect those dots of how we got from being there in September 2020 to here now in May 2021 with this new separate Progressive Democratic Club. Basically, when I became president of Columbia Democratic Club in September 2020, it seemed to be, it's a historic club that's been around for a while, but it was largely defunct. There was like 12 people at the meeting I was elected to, and I ran on a bold progressive agenda very characteristic of like the young wave with AOC and the Justice Democrats and all of them. And I basically ran on the same way that I ran the Salisbury University College Democrats chapter, which was the largest and most active college Dems chapter in the state at the time. That was being unapologetically progressive, taking bold, strong stances on issues in favor of human rights and equity. And most importantly, not being afraid to criticize elected Democrats when they act counter to these progressive values that polls show the majority of the party feels. I knew just through my time at College Dems that style of activism can, shake the table a little bit, ruffle some feathers. And that really repeated itself in the Columbia Democratic Club very early on, specifically around the issue of the ICE contract in Howard County that we had until very recently. Our county made I think it was $2 million a year or so through contracting with ICE to detain undocumented people. Nicole's former boss, and my council member, Liz Walsh, had introduced a bill to end the ICE contract. Our county executive, Democratic County Executive Ball, vetoed it despite it being passed with a majority of Democratic votes. And I issued a criticism of Executive Ball for that veto, and the pushback from a lot of quote unquote community leaders and people aligned with the establishment of the Democratic Party, and really just the status quo leadership that's been in control of Howard County for a very long time. And the pushback was incredibly severe against me, both behind the scenes and then eventually publicly. Attempts were made to sabotage meetings around that issue because they didn't want anything that might reflect poorly on the county executive, who is an elected Democrat. And that really boiled down to the crux of the issue that caused a lot of this public drama and tension over the next couple of months, which if you've followed anything on Facebook regarding the clubs for the last couple of months, you definitely know what we're talking about. So, before there is a little bit more there before I, delve any deeper. Nicole or Hiruy, is there anything that either of you want to say, of what it looked like from the outside looking in, because neither of you were club members before that, but I think you saw the stuff I was speaking on and got involved. So what did that look like from your perspectives?
Nicole?
That's a great question. I mean, in the fall of 2020 is when Councilmember Liz Walsh introduced CB 51, which was the legislation that the council level legislation that would end the ICE contract. So of course, during that time, and in general, the legislative schedule for the Howard County Council is pretty very consistent and sometimes really intense because it's really every month. So we were of course really focused on that at the time, and I wish we could say that it wasn't going to be an uphill battle, but one of the things that I noticed from the very beginning that we didn't really expect, and when I say the beginning, I mean right after everyone was sworn in for the council. And for perspective, all 5 members of the county council who were elected in 2018 were brand new to the job, right? Which is pretty unique. So everyone's trying to figure it out. We really didn't know what to expect as far as, how votes would go, the legislative process. And when we started and filed legislation at the beginning of 2019, we weren't expecting as much pushback as we got, and the lack of support from some of the Democrats on the council, and 4 out of 5 of them are Democrats. So I had seen for, at least what, a year and a half already, that, you know, how difficult it can be. And I knew that to get the support of some of the Democrats on the council, who we didn't think it would be so hard to support things that we thought were pretty simple, like this whole the word progressive, right? I mean, I wish that human rights and dignity were weren't considered like progressive, that it just was, right? That just was like, that's the bar. That's the bar. It's not quote unquote progressive. That's the standard, not the exception. Um, so, you know, to kind of see some of that battle or similar battle happen within a local Democratic club, I can't say is particularly shocking to me, but I guess on a certain level it still was. To see how the extent or the things that happened during that time.
Yeah, no, it was pretty surprising. I mean, as I said, I've been doing this stuff for a long time, but I've never faced pushback that severe. You know, especially it was surprising that they certainly didn't go easy on me and take into account that I'm a young person. That's for sure. Hiruy, did you have any thought? You know, at this point, it was still mostly behind the scenes, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It was nice to see that, you know, there were new people joining local democratic groups. And so, you know, someone, you know, given, you know, your experience, you know, with the party at the state level, and then, you know, in the central committee, you know, it's Wacomico, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, given, you know, I was, you know, I was excited that, you know, you were there to make some, you know, to make some changes. And so, you know, it was nice to see that, you know, the different changes you were starting to, you know, to implement. And, you know, that led to me, you know, participating a little, you know, a lot more in, you know, in what the club was, you know, what the club was doing. And you know, for once, you know, the Howard County Democratic Party, or at least, you know, one group of it, was actually doing something, you know, in a principled way, and not just saying things that sound nice. You know, and so the and you know, it was um it was disappointing to witness so many adults behaving in this way. You know, a lot of these people quote unquote advocate on behalf of children. You know, they advocate for school children, and this is a terrible example to set for you know, for school children, when you're out there cyberbullying and going out there smearing people, and you know, making false accusations, making stuff up, just so that you can protect a corrupt power structure. And that was what's happening. And it was, you know, was clear for the public. I think it was clear for the public to see, but unfortunately, you know, you know, as the we saw in, you know, on May 12th, you know, the entire establishment showed up just to take out, you know, a 23-year-old young men, and so they they knew that you were making an impact, and so that's why they showed up. So you had it was and it was clear that it was not possible to do that to do that in that club. And I think this is why this group, our organization, will be important, and will have because they the establishment likes to say that it's likes to throw around the word progressive and equity, and but at the end of the day, this is just same old corporate Democrat behavior. They there's the rile people up on social issues, while when it comes to the money, when it comes to the budget, they're doing the same thing as what the Republican Party does, which is giving the tax breaks to the corporations, or doing that kind of stuff. So this way, this group, I think, will bring forward some of these issues that have been ignored by the corporate Democrats. And so I'm excited for what we will do.
Yeah, and just to kind of try to wrap up the origin story, because the local ICE contract, Liz Walsh's bill on that was very early on in the presidency, and there was a lot of tension behind the scenes, but the bill got vetoed. It was what it was. But then there was this state bill, Delegate Vaughn Stewart's Dignity Not Detention bill, which would close all the ICE contracts in the state, including the one in Howard County. And the, for lack of a better term, Calvin Ball loyalists, people that wanted to protect him after he made that veto, they did not want the Dignity Not Detention bill to pass either. So there were behind the scenes attempts to kill legislative efforts for the club around Dignity Not Detention, again, to protect elected Democrats at the expense of actual immigrant communities. And even then, it was a lot behind the scenes, a lot of unethical, shady things were being done. But things didn't really get public until another big point of contention came. And really, it was the ICE contract issue earlier, but not just the ICE contract, the fact that I was willing to be critical of elected Democrats like Calvin Ball and Opal Jones on that issue. And you'll find that that's the common thread between all of these issues, is it's me/us making very reasonable criticisms of elected Democrats, trying to make them better and stop problematic practices. And then we get attacked for calling that out, and people try to give the elected Democrats a pass. And I guess this one doesn't involve as much elected Democrats, more so than who was buying off the elected Democrats. But the other big point of contention was the Columbia Association elections, which were coming up at the time. They were on April 24th, but there was like months of campaigning before that, and there was this mysterious group that popped up, the Rouse Project, that we can dig into the details of a little bit more later. But Hiruy, a lot of establishment figures involved with the Rouse Project, which was running to essentially run a slate of candidates in the CA elections with an unknown agenda. And there was a lot of establishment aligned figures, including former Democratic County Executive Ken Ullman, former Republican County Executive Alan Kittleman, and they just pop up out of nowhere, obviously very well funded, just saying, hey, we're your friendly neighborhood people that care about an election, just trying to increase turnout and be good citizens. But just citizen advocacy organizations don't have money like that. People knew that there's something up, and Hiruy basically posted a deep dive blog series speculating to what the Rouse Project's true intentions may be, where their funding may be coming from, and tracing the connections of some of the executive committee members and their ties to really, what the open, and people say this word as a derogatory, conspiracy, but I think in this case, this is most likely actually true. The whole theory is that this is developers funding this group, trying to get pro-development or pro-really overdevelopment candidates elected. And Hiruy posted a blog project, three-part blog series. Yeah, just making those speculations, being a little bit critical. And again, it was another example of somebody, asking questions about the local political establishment and, people that are influential in Democratic Party circles here, and was met with, awful attacks, not just on Hiruy for being the one to write it, launching him as a crazy tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist, but even calls on me to literally resign as Columbia Democratic Club president for just allowing the post to be posted in the Columbia Democratic Club Facebook group. And before I get on like the full fallout of that over the next couple months, Hiruy or Nicole, do you guys want to talk? Because that was what marked the date that the behind the scenes fighting on Columbia Democratic Club turned public, because also the day before, in response to the arguing over efforts to kill the legislative efforts around digging that detention to end the ICE contract, certain members of the executive board had tried to change the passwords of the social media accounts, lock myself and others out of it. And then that happened basically on the same day that Hiruy's blog was posted. So a lot happened that day. So Nicole, did you want to speak on that series of unfortunate events, as they say?
Yeah. So what I want to say that kind of, I think, wraps kind of around what you've just said and what Hiruy's discussed is that, the crux of why this new group was started, right? The Progressive Democrats of Howard County is a lot about, just being able to ask questions of elected Democrats. And that is basically what all of us did, essentially, in different forms. We had questions and a different stance, right? And not only was that not okay with the Democratic status quo in Howard County, it was basically an avalanche of discontent at a minimum. So, the idea that constituents, right? Because all of us are constituents of the county council, the county executive, and then we have our members in the state delegation. We're all constituents. Why can't we ask questions? That's incumbent upon us as people. They work for all of us, right? They're elected, and we have a voice. And that was attempted to be extinguished. Like, there couldn't even be a conversation. So, when I see elected Democrats in Howard County and some other people who don't want to talk about documented abuse of ICE detainees at the hands of Howard County employees in our detention center, that still to this day, to my knowledge, has not once been acknowledged by our Democratic county executive at all, right? The person who vetoed the ICE contract, or not the ICE contract, the vetoed CB 51. And then to have other people who say that they're experts on the issue, they're immigration lawyers, we should keep the ICE contract, to then have none of them talk about the abuse of ICE detainees in our detention center at the hands of correctional staff. We can't talk about that? We shouldn't be talking about that? That's not a problem? That is unacceptable. That is wholly unacceptable. And they tried to sweep it under the rug and not talk about it and defend the people who wanted to keep the ICE contract. And that's not okay. So that's part of the reason why we're here. We're Democrats, right? We have values. We want to uphold human rights and dignity. And we will ask questions of our elected officials because that is our responsibility. And anyone else who thinks that that's a problem needs to check themselves.
Well put. Drop the mic. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's certainly. Yeah. That again, that's the common thread here, is that there are just certain people in the county, particularly ones in charge and connected to those in charge, who think that, yeah, asking questions, questioning authority, or being critical of elected Democrats is blasphemous, or certain elected Democrats, I should say. But yeah, Hiruy, did you want to?
Yeah, I think there's a common thread here because you know, when the county executive ran for county executive, he introduced CB9 to show that he was good on immigration issues, and that was vetoed. That rightfully riled people up against public officials like Alan Kitterman and Democratic council member John Weinstein. And so that led to what happened. That was one of the elements that led to what happened in 2018. One of the county executive Ball's propositions was that I will do everything I can to make Howard County friendly to to immigrants, undocumented or whatever. And so when the issue of the ICE contract came up, I think in 2019, for a long, in the background, people were talking to him and his staff, and asking for this to be canceled, and there was no reaction. There was no willingness to do any of that, and he didn't make any of these changes until council member Walsh introduced CB 51, and then a few days later, he offered a policy change, which he was against when it was CB9. When County Executive Kittelman proposed a policy change instead of approving CB9, he was against it. Now he's fine with it. So he introduced the policy change, and it wasn't actually a policy change because a few days later, Councilmember Walsh found out that the policy change gave the director of the detention center a way out, so that it would be at his discretion. The decision to detain people was still going to be at his discretion. So it wasn't really a policy change either. So it turns out that he wasn't really good on immigration issues, and so that was being called out. That was what was being called out on by people like me, but more specifically when you took over, Jake, and the CDC, that brought that was there was more focus on that, which people did not want that, because it would remove the veneer that the corporate Democrats had about there being good on social issues. And, because at the end of the day, they, when it came down to, even the social issues, the corporate Democrats were terrible. And so related, bringing it, back to the Rouse Project. The Rouse Project was, they wanted to increase the diversity of the Columbia Association board. So increasing diversity is a good, benevolent goal, but that's not what they want. That was not their goal. It was to use diversity as a ploy, as a way to rile people up and put in people who agreed with the goals of the backers of the Rouse Project, in that they, of unchecked, unmitigated growth that benefited specifically, solely the corporate, the corporations, with the developer corporations. So it was to do that. I have no doubt that the people that they, yes, it was a diverse slate, but they, some of the, given it would have had those people been elected, all of them, it would have been a more diverse slate. But it doesn't negate the fact that those people agreed with what, the backers of the Rouse Project, Howard Hughes, wanted. So same thing with the county council. It's more diverse. I mean, the county government, you have an African-American county executive, and there's one African-American council member, but that doesn't negate the fact that they are pro, corporate, I mean, developer, subsidies, which they have been. The data shows that they have been. And so they, when it was using original data, with original documentation of contracts, of easement contracts from the county records, and other groups, related groups like the Ann Arbor Trust. When I prepared that report on the Rouse Project, it was described as a conspiracy theory, but that's what Trump, when Trump gets called out, he would react and say that was fake news. So it was the same thing. So they it was just a way to try and discredit something that was legitimately sourced. There was very little speculation about what was in that report. And lo and behold, a week or so later, former county executive Liz Bobo came out and said that it was pretty much the intention of this Rouse Project was not on the up and up, and they were trying to hijack an HOA election. It wasn't jurisdictional. It wasn't an election that was it's just it's a big HOA, and the representatives of this HOA were being elected, and that's what the Rouse Project was trying to do. And they were trying to elect people that would create favorable conditions so that Howard Hughes can profit even more than it has over the past however many years that it's been in business in Howard County.
Yeah, and to really kind of wrap up the origin story and connect that back to our purpose. So, Hiruy publishes that series of blog posts, gets a ton of hate for it, even though it's incredibly well researched and sourced and fact checked. All the people criticizing it, nobody could actually point to anything that was inaccurate in the series, but of course they attacked nonetheless. And things were really ugly publicly for a while. Myself, Hiruy, Nicole, and really anybody else who also had the courage to step out of line with the groupthink, got pretty ruthlessly criticized for just silly, petty, personal things, not even related to the issue, but, people who were just very ruthless. So that continued basically from like February until the Columbia Democratic Club elections in May. And I think, what was really just frustrating both with the ICE contract battle and with the Rouse Project is like, being against corporate money in politics, funding elections, and standing with immigrants should just be common sense, like the platform for the Democratic Party. But the fact that it's like community leaders, some of whom even try to slap that label progressive on themselves, the fact that those are the people who the left is supposed to like be able to depend on, and these are the people actually fighting to keep the ICE contract. The biggest gaslighters of those critical of the Rouse Project. And I think that summarizes the purpose of why we decided to create this club and not run a slate for Columbia Democratic Club or run for re-election for Columbia Democratic Club. And that, and if you guys disagree, feel free to chime in. But for me, it became clear through my time as president of that club that at least the existing local party structures were not open to progressives. It was not a safe space for progressives. Maybe a safe space for people who call themselves a progressive, but don't actually act like a progressive. The second you actually act like a progressive and try to hold our elected Democrats accountable, move them to the left, give us the policy that we deserve and need, they sick the dogs on you, they smear you, they do a character assassination. Quite honestly, they try to literally run you out of the club or out of the organization. They try to take back their club. So that's why I think we felt the need to create this, to give progressives a voice, give progressives a space, and like an actual space where they're not going to be gaslit. They're not going to be, have the wool pulled over their eyes. Nicole, you want to jump in? Looks like.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, and it's, it is called the Progressive Democrats of Howard County, but really, of course, we're open to, we want people to feel like they have a place and people that they can talk to who have questions about basic things like, how does the county government work? If, let's say I see one of those signs in my neighborhood that indicates a development project is going to be built and it's in a certain phase. What does this mean? There's really such a lack of organized information that just covers the basics, right? And what year are we in? We're in 2021. Clearly some of this things are built on a regular basis. Why is this information so inaccessible and doesn't exist in a way that's easy to find and easy to understand? And we want to help people understand that just on a basic factual level. And it's incredibly needed. The mystery and the nebulous nature of some of these things just need to be broken down so that then people can better understand and go from there, right? And then they can make whatever conclusions they want to come with to. So I think, it's, yes, of course, we support progressive policies, but then also like anyone who just wants to figure out what the heck is going on, we're near the end of May, and again, it's 2021, and how many people still have questions about the county budget process and who has control over what? How long has the county budget process been going on? And so many involved intelligent people still have no idea how to figure out where that is. And it's because a lot of that information doesn't exist yet. So, or at least in digestible, parts. So I think we're here for that. And there are a lot of people on any political, shade spectrum, anything, who don't like the influence of big money in politics. And that's on the left and that's on the right, that's in the center, right? And a lot of that happens. No, who knows, who in the state of Maryland knows where to find someone's campaign finance report? I mean, honest to Pete, where do they even go? But if they knew, they'd probably be mad, right? They'd look at some of that stuff and go, I'm sorry, you got $6,000 from whom? And it matters, is my $5 donation, does it honestly mean as much as someone's $6,000 donation? I mean, I'm sure a lot of elected officials will say, of course, of course we listen to everybody, but at the end of the day, come on, you know, um, that $6,000 was made for a reason, and it's kind of like a business investment, isn't it? Like someone invested $6,000 and they expect something back. And I think that people who don't have that money to give, or who, just want simply to be represented, they just are legitimately not getting the same voice. And we've got super majorities at local and state level legislatures of Democrats, where we should not have to fight as hard to get some of these things passed. It is awful that how many advocacies organization, 97, have to come together to create a coalition and advocate at the state level and then maybe get something passed. That's not acceptable. That's not acceptable. That shouldn't be happening at the state level. That shouldn't be happening at the local level. And the reason why it's so hard is because there's too much big money in politics and the little guys can't win. So we're here to make a difference in that capacity and to give you, me, people who don't have to you shouldn't have to donate to someone's campaign to have a voice, right? So we're here to make sure that more people in Howard County are represented in government.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead.
The only thing I would add to that, I agree with what's been said so far. When it comes to zoning and land use, there isn't, it doesn't have any political ideology, and it's, it was said, left, right, center, everybody's, I think, worried about money in politics, and to the extent that it does apply a lot to zoning and land use, I think again, left, right, and center, it doesn't have the zoning and land use doesn't care about the party. It's it's just, it is what it is, but it affects the money, it affects the budget, and I would say a minimum of 80% of the county's budget, I would say, is impacted by the zoning and land use decisions. And I think we will have, we're a lot of people who are part of this group will like Jake mentioned, are not going to be appreciative of groupthink, and also they're going to be worried about increasing accountability in county government and making sure that zoning and land use decisions are made in a way that increases, in a way that it doesn't take away the county's budget and allocate it disproportionately to developers, and ultimately ensuring that our infrastructure, the quality of infrastructure is maintained and increased, so that our the school quality increases, so that people who can't who rely on free and reduced meals, school children attend classes with low class sizes, so that they can get the a better quality education. And so I think that's a concern of anybody, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, or any party ideology. And so I know people who will be part of this group, they'll have different objectives, but ultimately I think we will share the same objectives, in a sense that we need to increase accountability in government, and make sure that there's there's no groupthink in in the way that we share ideas, and we don't have to free and fair exchange of ideas.
Yeah, and I think you both touch on, really important thing there of, progressive values are great, but also like people have to realize what's going on in the county, and specifically with development and zoning and land use issues. Like, I know as a young progressive who had been following politics really since 2016, and I thought I knew it all when I was involved with organizing on the Eastern Shore, I realized, like, if you're like, I think most people who follow politics, they stick to mostly national politics and maybe state politics. And so they do know about money in politics and how that affects, our politicians not doing things like Medicare for all, or the military industrial complex pushing for more war. But I was incredibly ignorant on development and zoning and land use issues, which are more county local issues. But the dynamic of money in politics absolutely still applies. But because I wasn't well versed to be on the lookout for that, yeah, the developers are very clever. They have these, first of all, they make it purposely confusing for people so that the layman can't really tell what's going on. They just tune out because it sounds boring. But they've also brilliantly learned how to co-opt the rhetoric of equity and diversity and inclusion, which are all like very important and valid concepts, but the developers basically bastardize them and use that rhetoric and say, oh, we value this, and act like the things that they're pursuing are towards that end. But that's just not the case. The reality is so much of what they do is against equity. They act like they're for affordable housing. They actually try to wiggle out of building affordable housing every opportunity that they get. So this is the type of community education that we also plan to do with this group, is teaching people the basics of zoning and land use. What are these little tricks that developers are always constantly using to not have to pay for their own projects, to shift that burden on the taxpayer, to do things like contribute to, school and infrastructure overcrowding and the lack of affordable housing, as much as they pretend like they don't support that. So, other than the community education on development and other issues, I think we also plan to do a lot of international relations work and stuff, highlighting really disastrous foreign policy and how that contributes to humanitarian crises around the world. Right now, what Israel is doing to Palestinians is a great example on that, and we are taking action as a club on that soon. So that's, am I missing anything else for what people can expect from us? What our purpose? We might have done a pretty good job there, Nicole. Yeah.
I mean, we're also fun people. I mean, like there's some of this stuff can be pretty intense, right? And a lot of people feel that and recognize that, and we need to have some light moments as well, and some events that kind of keep people together, and don't I think it's easy for anybody to burn out because there's so much that needs to be done, right? Um, so we're certainly trying to do a lot of good, or at least what we think is good, right? Because of course, some other people would disagree with what that is. So yeah, come along to the Progressive Democrats of Howard County. We're gonna
That
do
is
some
our,
stuff. This is my singing voice. That's not a great
yeah,
one.
I was gonna say that is our official theme song
Is
for
it?
now. Yeah, we're adopting it. It's official. But yeah, so I think we're coming up on an hour here, so I think we can wrap it up. I will try to put a quick pin on the Rouse Project stuff since we brought it up. Want to tell people in case they didn't follow the outcome of that. But yeah, obviously, as Hiruy said, it was an HOA election, so it's technically not a public election, but there's over 100,000 people in Colombia. I believe the Colombia Association is one of the largest HOAs in the country. So it's a big deal. It has significant influence over, the decisions made in Colombia, particularly like what areas can and cannot be developed on. Yeah, so it's traditionally low turnout because a lot of people don't follow HOA elections. But the Rouse Project came up and spent very obviously like tens of thousands of dollars between mailers, consultants, websites, PR firms, but the thing that's scary about it being an HOA election, not a public election, is they did not have to publicly report any of this information like you would have to do in a normal election. In a normal election, our politicians can still be bought, but at least we can see some transparency into who's buying them. There absolutely none of that exists with the CA races. So that's what's really scary about this Rouse Project thing is this could set a really terrible precedent for dark money in HOA elections in future years in Colombia, maybe from the Rouse Project, and maybe even Howard Hughes and other places export this strategy to other HOAs around the country. But despite them spending all those tens of thousands of dollars, creating all these different shell organizations to try to boost their legitimacy, they endorsed candidates in 6 races. They only endorsed 1 incumbent, and they were only successful in 2 of the 6 races, one of which the candidate was an incumbent. And so by and large, the Rouse Project was unsuccessful with their big money hijacking of the CA races. But I think me and probably the others on this call think maybe this isn't the last we're going to hear of the Rouse Project, and they'll either come back next year or the same funders will come back with the same goal to take over the CA elections next year, but with a rebrand and a different name, and just to appease anybody who wants to say, oh, this is just speculation, there's no real evidence, like, why are you saying this is Howard Hughes or developers that are likely funding this project? And some of the the trail leading us there is the public affairs firm that they're using is called Adeo Advocacy. That's what they built their website for. The founder and president of that was a managing partner at another public affairs firm called KO Public Affairs, which is now led by 2 registered Howard Hughes Corporation lobbyists. So there, it's a whole web. There are other little traces like that. Like, for example, the Rouse Project's logo uses an image that is trademarked by the Howard Research and Development Corporation, which is like an arm of Howard Hughes. So it's pretty obvious. The only way you can't see it is if you kind of are trying to not see it, in my opinion. So that's why we need this group to do things like, spreading the big money takeover, not just in our regular elections, but even these damn HOA elections. So that's all from me. If the rest of you have any closing statements, anything? No? Okay, well, follow us or look us up on social media. Check out our website, hocoprogressives.com. You should be able to sign up for our email list on that. And I would recommend that you follow us on Twitter at ProgressHoco. Join our Facebook group, like our Facebook page. I don't know what day exactly we'll be posting this, but the pages are a little bit bare right now, but we're in the very near future really ramping up public content on those pages. So other than that, be on the lookout for our next podcast episode and any other public actions that the club's doing.
Stay tuned.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
All right, everybody.